Hey, good afternoon. My name is Denise, and I'm going to be supporting the webinar today. Today's webinar will be the historic collection and historical products in Digimap, presented by Giles Martin, Head of Data Sales at Landmark. Giles will be happy to answer all your questions at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat, and at the end, we will go through them and answer them for you. Thank you very much for attending, and I will leave you with Giles now. Thank you, Giles.
Hi, thanks, Denise. Hi, everybody. So I've just got to, thought I'd start with just a quick overview because of where the historic maps came from in terms of why we have these maps within Landmark. But if anyone has any questions as we go along, just put the hand up and we can address those. So Landmark Information Group, skip the next slide. As a business, we use the historic maps ourselves. So with the Ordnance Survey, around just over 20 years ago, we digitized the historic map archive predominantly to use in environmental reporting for local authorities. And we use that in a number of our reports. So as you can see here, Landmark use data and we create and consume it into all those services. And that will touch on any form of property transaction or environmental risk analysis. So we do a lot of desktop survey products. One you may come across at some point would be something called EnviroCheck, or if you have bought a house or you are going to buy a house, the property reports you get are likely to also be consuming historic maps into that data. So that's a very quick, this is how we use the data into our own products as well. Now, I'll come on to the way we then use those, but I'll give you now an overview of the historic map data. So the historic map, as I mentioned, is used for many purposes in the UK. It was created with the Ordnance Survey. We scanned all of the paper maps we could access from various archives, be it the Ordnance Surveys, the National Library of Scotland, the British Library, and the Northern Ireland. There were some records stored in Northern Ireland as well, where they were sent during the war for safety. We then cut those maps and started the scanning process using working with an academic called Brian Adams. We then had to work out all of the original projections. I'll come on to the joys of projections in a minute. But we took all of that data to create a detailed visual record of past landscapes, features, and just activity at a location, which has been the purpose being to develop an understanding of change and the foundations of what was there. So it helps to inform on what you can do going forward. This is one of those slides. It doesn't all appear at once, isn't it? So the maps have a comprehensive coverage of scale. So the most detailed scale of the historic maps will be at the 1 to 10,000 scale, which is the equivalent to your sort of the Ordnance Survey's vector map products now. You then have a larger scale at 1 to 2,500. We then have a number of unpublished editions, historical aerial photography, Cold War maps, which we'll come on to, which is quite interesting, and actual historic building use, as you can see here in what we would refer to as town plans. The archive of town plans ranges from 1850 to 1910, and they're the largest scale of mapping that we processed, and they cover most towns and cities with more than 4,000 people in the population at that time. They provide a real level of detail that you won't see in the other maps, such as lampposts, manholes, and specific building use. So you might find also details such as arched passageways, divisions between tenements, ground floor layout, so your equivalent now of a floor plan that you might see on Rightmove, and the actual use of industrial properties. We will go on to the next slide. So with that data, we've then created a mapping service, which is the service you're able to access through EDINA. And to do this, we had to georectify the complete archive to create a seamless layer. So you weren't, because especially with the county series data, the county series, as you would expect, the mapping was done to county level. And that archive now includes over 1 million map images at a variety of scales. This is used for understanding boundary disputes, coastal erosion, which features into your environmental studies, landscape evolution. I won't read through all of these scales. You can kind of see them all there, so it's not to get lost in the detail there. We'll give you a bit more on. Oh, sorry, it skipped forward one. There we go. So we have the various uses of the historic mapping now as well. So you can use the mapping for land mapping, land management, legal applications such as planning applications, environmental reporting, land use studies, contaminated land analysis. So if you want to see how a land has been used previously, it may be that there have been industry in a location where there would be then contamination left in that area that you would need to understand. And then obviously for a lot of research projects, so environmental studies, heritage statements, so it's used by people like Historic England, or as you imagine, a great deal. Let me just make sure I'm not saying things now that I'm going to repeat in a minute. As I mentioned, we had to work a lot when we built the data with the various county series to understand the projections, because each county had its own central meridian or origin based on local landmarks. It wasn't like we have now. This is all prior to the national grid, British national grid, that we were all familiar with from the Ordnance Survey. So, for example, Ripon or a specific location on Dartmoor was used to generate projection for all of the mapping that was then created in the county of Devon. And obviously, many counties, while they may share those projections, they are often different. So we had to map each sheet at a time and make sure that we were understanding the correct locations of each piece of data. As you can see here, this is how, for example, Gloucestershire and Herefordshire would compare if we hadn't rectified those, so that they could then match and become that seamless layer that is available in a API service. But before we had the national grid, which covered the whole country, so the county series is a very complex set of data to understand how it's all put together. This involved us having to bring several different meridians into one single service or layer across all of the counties that we work with. We did this using a level of mosaic technology. This was quite a while ago now, but it's still quite a complex process, even if we were even to look at doing this now. It hasn't moved on. Technology has moved on, but the process is the same. So we've had to create seamless layers of data using many tools to manage overlaying maps, the different dates, scales, projections, all of the different complexities. So if you think how hard it is now mapping and matching current data, we had to do that with different sources, different projections, and we worked out processes to improve the accuracy. So you can now, if you look at those older maps, you'll actually see that it's very accurate in comparison to the current data, which is a testament to the mapping that was created sort of going back as far as the 1800s. With that, we've built the historic map scale model. So as you can see at the top here, as I mentioned, we have the town mapping, the town plans going back to 1840 up to 1993, depending on the scale. So we have a lot of coverage for those layers, depending on the towns that are included. We then have the urban mapping from 1854. And then moving forward, you can see we then have all of the sort of rural data as well that came in, and has the whole country. And the coverage you would expect to see for those varies, because obviously town plans, as you can see here, there were a lot less towns in 1941, for example, here on the left, and then you can see over time how that mapping has increased, so you will have a greater level of coverage. Urban, you can see from 1937 up to 1993 again, which is the point when we moved on from the historic maps to the current mapping. The coverage was pretty similar, but obviously the detail was a lot better. And then rural mapping, again, we go back. If you can see here, it's national coverage because it was a higher scale and it was much more detailed. The data itself is the total file size that we host for the API service, which you're able to access, is 1 terabyte. So it's not small by any means, especially not when you think that's made into a service which you're then able to access. That compiles of 6.5 million files and 5,500 almost directories. That's the compressed size. If we were to then take it as it stands, for just as if you were to take a photo of a map, you're looking at a total of, what we're looking at there, nearly 400 terabytes of data, which the value of putting this data once it's processed into a service is, these days especially, we're deduplicating the need for storing data and accessing it, and we're improving on that access model. So in terms of that build of a service, we've built a raster catalog for each combination of each county layer, each available epoch, or epoch being the dates that the maps were created in, and the scales. So you've got the area, the date, and the scale are the three defining areas there. And then in each catalog, you're able to filter by that, using that, and then using mosaicking, as I mentioned, for the data itself, we're then able to build the seamless layers that you view in the data. So we might find, if you were to look between, for example, Devon and Cornwall, which is an area I'm familiar with, if you look on the border of the River Tamar, you will see that the county layer changes because you've got Devon and Cornwall are two very different areas, and you've got the river, which is a good defining line to reference. Hold on, we're missing a bit there as well. So we've then built in the service, which, as I mentioned, it's got all of these bits here. We've then added in the ability for these map services, so you can actually have a time sequence. So as you can see in the image here, you have the time slider, so you can actually just drag the bar to view the times, the dates that you're looking at. And the map will also then tell you in this web browser, you could view the actual layer and switch between layers from the drop-down menu. And there's an address search capability. We built all of that into a service to access and use the data. And if we just come on to now the sequencing that we were mentioning there, is how you can view the data by attribute. This is how we've done that. You can change your viewpoint and it will just pull out the different layers. So you can switch between, for example, if you're looking at 1914 in the middle here, between Devon and Cornwall, it would switch to 1914 layer. And then if you wanted to switch it back, you could change between those views of the data in the service, because we don't remove anything. There's just so much information, you can just change the sequence of how we present it. And the service itself is available. I think you consume it through EDINA as the OGC WMS service for use in your desktop application, so be that Esri or QGIS or any other application you're using, and you can feed the data in, view the layers, and overlay that as required. So you can see in that map on the left, there are two different versions of the county scale mapping with different, there'll be two different epochs there that you'll be viewing, but it would make it into that seamless layer that you're looking for. I've just got some examples now to view of the different types of data. So this is I've selected Wembley in central London. So this is where Wembley was looking at a county series scale of 10 to 560, which isn't a scale you would use now. That was Wembley in 1896. It then moved on to, if you go to 1977 using the OS data, so we've jumped forward a bit, you can see the growth of London into that area now, and then how that's changed. And obviously you've now got Wembley in place. This is a 1985 map that was part of the Cold War maps that were created by Russia. We have the complete archive of these as well. They were used for mapping essentially invasion plans, and they're more of a, in some ways they're nice to have because they look quite good and their color, but they also do provide a very different perspective of the type of land use and reasoning for mapping. So you include a lot of information like road widths, surface types, obvious reasons. But in terms of accuracy comparison, this is comparing a Russian map with aerial photography, as we said, using all of the processes I've mentioned. And you can see how accurate that historic map and that historic aerial photo are with the mosaicking process that we've used to create that data. So if I then look, you can see that historic map on its own there. This is from the historic imagery from the British Library. As I said, we've got all of this data available. And that's it overlaid with that 1977 plan, so you can see the accuracy of the data. And then this would be that 1977 plan again, overlaid and mapped with the current OS. This would be the OS open data from the OS APIs that they provide. So that's all there then. Another example, just to give you a view, this is in Manchester, so another part of the country. This is the data from 1851 in central Manchester. This is the county series from Lancashire and Furness County. See, it's a military location there. You've then got how that's developed into 1891, so over that period of 40 years. You can see the accuracy has definitely improved over the with the scale there. And this is a good example here. You can see that change of use. So it's gone from being a military training location by the looks of things to become basically a residential area in the centre of Manchester. That was by 1951. So over a period of 100 years, you can see there's been a real change in use, which is when we're talking about the understanding how a historic map can show that change of use. And if you're thinking about this as a location, it's one of the things these are often used in is unexploded ordnance mapping. You can see the type of use of land would have an interest to defining any risk that might be associated with any development going forward that we would consider now. And if I just bring in one more, there you go, that's another scale of the mapping going forward to 1994. So that out of that API service. Some use cases we have of how this data is used. So National Highways use historic mapping to understand the historic use of land around where their road network sits and the reasoning for why they have to manage land in a certain way, because understanding how it was used previously over a period of time will impact what they will do in terms of road development, and how what they look to use that land for in terms of future planning and development of the road network. And they would use the historic mapping, and then it would be compared with other location data sets such as the British Geological Survey, their data sets, and other sources as well, to really give them a massive desktop analysis capability to understand what impacts their network in terms of even previous use, historic data, and how that might impact in terms of things like heavy rainfall or potential subsidence and things like that. So they really heavily use that data. It's quite critical to them. We also feed the data into the Magic service for Natural England, which is used by used heavily. It serves over 14 million maps a month for all sorts of environmental management purposes. So that data is so the same service that we supply to you via EDINA is also made available. It's feeding into services like this, so it's used in a very heavy access. So it's really quite a critical piece of work. It's also then used by organisations like the National Trust, obviously mapping and understanding their land. It gives them access to the historic maps across their complete land holdings. So that's all the sites that we would all visit, but additionally, all of their land holdings, such as farmland, coastal locations. So they use it understanding things like the coast path, sea cliff erosion, subsidence, change of use of land. It might be something such as if you're looking to replant a forest, where would you do it? Use the historic maps to understand where ancient woodland has been and the types of tree cover that was there then, so you can start looking at what was in an area. So it informs that very early study part of a project. Okay, and then as I mentioned, we use the data very much so within Landmark ourselves. So within our geo division, we combine the historic data and the historic maps with a lot of our own products and with other data sets such as points of interest, which is a commercial property data set. We then bring it in with our 700 other data sets that we have and we use, and we feed it into our clients' solutions that we provide to help them understand basically location using geospatial data via a service, via data modeling, data transformation. And we add a level of intelligence that comes from the many geospatial experts that we have in the business. But historic maps are a key to providing that real understanding of how we use a location and why something has happened. So it might be that you look at a piece of land now and current mapping and land use. So as we move into a world of looking at biodiversity net gain, ESG, future planning, greenfield, brownfield association to a location, understanding the reasoning why it's being classified in a way is very much a good starting point, because if you can understand why something happened 100 years ago based on the land use, it can really inform that decision making today as well. And that was a very quick, hopefully not too fast though, tour of the Historic Map Archive.
I'm going to start presentations, so I will just share my screen and I will quickly demonstrate how you can see and you can use historic maps in Digimap. When you first open Digimap, you will see a selection of all your collections, all the collections that are covered in your package. And you can go to historic. So when you enter to the historic map, there is a little text about the historic collection and also a few tips on how to get started with the historic collection and some FAQs that you can click and go about to investigate yourself. If this is not enough, we have here the help pages, which will guide you to the historic collections in details for each of the functions and that you can click. I will open here the help center so that you can see what you have. You have about mapping, about Digimap, making maps, downloading data, our maps and data, so that will show all the products we have. So let's go back here. And on the right side panel, you will see the web services and the historic Digimap. The web services will allow you to copy the link from the historic Digimap and transfer it and open it in one of your other collections, for example, Ordnance Survey. So when you add these two Ordnance Survey maps, you will have an Ordnance Survey map, a base map with historic collections on top of it, and you'll be able to click the data you want, the product you want. So going back to historic, And you can do the opposite as well. You can bring data from other collections in the same way to the historic Digimap. That's a way that you can combine different maps without having two maps opened in a two app and look at them separately. You can have one as a base map and the other one as overlays. And it will only display the data that you select. So you appear a list of data and you can tick and untick them until you get the data that you want displayed on the base map that you want. So you can do that as well. When you enter to the historic collection, you have your UK map here. You can zoom in and out using the scrolling button. As you zoom in, you will see that my map will change. And observe the panel on the top banner here. It's going to change as well. Now I have lots of boxes with blue writing. So if the box is white, that means that that data is available for you. By default, Digimap will take you to the earliest map available as you zoom in. As you continue zooming in, you can see that the numbers change, the data change, the decades change, and you can zoom into very high level of details. Principally in the big cities with more than 4,000 population, you can have a good detailed view of the cities, even in a very old map. And you can notice as well that as I zoom in and out, that some areas have these blue no historic maps of this location available for decade or the location or zooming level that you want to. So that happens because not all councils were mapped in every decade. So there are lots of gaps in the decades as well. You can either change the decade or you can change the zoom in your map and it might appear. If you change the zoom level, you can see more details, but if you want to look here, you will have to just change the decade to one up or one down. This is how you can see different maps. You can click on different decades. You can click on the contemporary map as well, which is the OS map. And you can search for a place, for example, let me search for Edinburgh. When I search for Edinburgh, I can choose. There will be a list of places or a list of roads. I can look at roads that have the name Edinburgh in them or that are in Edinburgh. I can look for places. I just want the place at this moment. And I can see here that what part of my map I am. So I'm here at a railway station. I can click on the overview map and it will show a rectangle exactly where I am in the map. As I zoom in, the rectangle will be more clear so you can see. And from the overview map, I can actually change the location and I can manipulate my map in this way. It will show here as well. If I change the location for here, for example, and I am in Dunfermline, and I can see the map as I want. I can see the map in different decades, and I can compare two different maps using the two app. This is the contemporary map I'm looking at, but I want to know what happened with this population in 1850s, and that's the area I'm looking at. If I swap this to 1890s, I can see how the city is growing and I can create a reconstruction of the growth of the city from the maps I have available in Digimap. And you can see that the city that started very small and very central is now growing, and in 1960s it's much bigger than it was in 1930s, for example. If I go to 80s, I don't have all the map. And if I go to 2005, hopefully I will be able to see the whole map as soon as internet allows. If it appears blank like this, it is not there is no problem with the map. The problem is the internet, and it will come with time. In 2005, the city is almost as big as it is now. So I can go and create a whole historic evolution of a town, a city, from the 1840s all the way to the contemporary map. I can also look at the maps I have here, and I can save my maps. I can save annotated maps and I can save maps that are not annotated and look at them before. I can create folders and I can add folders. I can add maps and create an organized file for my investigation, for my research. And with the overlays, you can add the WMS feed from another collection, as I mentioned before. And then you can have the historic base map with an overlay of the details of other collections you want. For example, if you want to bring the geology collection and have just a few elements of the geology map, it will appear here and you will be able to click to tick and untick the elements you want to be displayed on your historic map. So it's quite an interesting thing to do as well. So when I click on the plus sign here, then I will have the ability to add the link that I got from the web services. Or I can search for a function for something for my map. For example, if I want a forest, I will click on forest, search, and it will give me options of forests that I can add to my map. I will click them and I will be able to see them displayed on my map as an overlay as well. As I said before, we can make annotations in the map. I can add markers. I can customize my marker by color, change the lines to be thicker, to be dotted, and I can change the type of marker I want. And as I click on the map, the mark is going to appear. I can draw polygons in different shapes. I can have a triangle, a square. I can click, leave, double click at the end, and I have my polygon red. I can make the polygon in the shape that I want, so it doesn't have to be always a square or a rectangle. And I will have a polygon in the contours of a building, for example. I can add lines. I can measure my polygons and my lines. So let me build a line from here to here, double click at the end, and I can come and measure my polygon, and I can go again, and I can measure in metric or imperial measurement, measure my lines. So there are lots of annotations you can do in your map, and you can save your map with your annotations in it. So you can go in the future and work on it. I can add text to my map as well. When I click here, I have the word text, which I can drag and put whatever I want as a title. If I have saved the images of a place, I can click on the little camera, click on the place where I want the image added, and add the image that I have in my files as well. I can use the grid reference, and I can use buffer tools to measure, for example, a point buffer would measure the diameter of a place. A line buffer would measure, for example, if you want to investigate noise pollution or how a river has shrunk or grew throughout the years, you can use the line buffer. I used meters here. Let me use 1 mile instead. And I click again, click again, click again, and double click at the end. 1 mile was a little too much. So I can go and delete my drawings if I don't want to save that. It will ask me if I want to delete everything, and I decided not. I decided that I will just delete on click. I can go and click and delete. If I select my drawings, I will also be able to modify. I'll be able to create different points or rotate or enlarge or minimize it and transform. So these are the drawing tools, and is just another way you can customize your maps. You can do more measurement. Just this measuring tool here won't save. If you want to save, you have to use the measuring tool in the drawing tools. This is just for doing on the spot, on the go measurement. And you can identify where you are in your map. So you can see as I move, it will be moving as well. So if I want to capture a coordinate, I will click here, and then when I click exactly in this roundabout, I will know where it is, and I have all the coordinates here. I can copy them or I can annotate them from here. And I also can see the scale of my map. I can also have information of my map if I click on the information link up in the banner. I have here also the overlapping map, and places like London, for example, you can see the map is not very clear, and that happens because the councils, they either changed boundaries or they mapped beyond their boundaries. So if you go to the overlap map section, you can see here the parts that are overlapping, And you can either click on them in the map and see them individually, or you can click on them here on the words, and then you can see them individually as well. So that is a way in which you can avoid the overlap and have a more clear map for you to look at. You can also save your screen. You can save your screen in PNG or JPEG, and you just click on Save Image, and the screen will save. If you want more flexibility, instead of saving, you can print. So here you can choose the format, PDF, PNG, or JPEG. You can choose the size of paper, portrait, landscape, and include your name or national grid lines and so on. Here I have the maps available for download in historic maps. So the town planners are from 840s to 1960s. The country cities are from 1850s to 1960s, and the national grid are from after the Second World War, when digital maps started getting available. You can choose one of them, and you can look here if you have them available. How are you going to see if you have them available? You can look at the availability grid, which is these little squares here. If the map turns pink, that means that map is available. And you can do it for each one of them. So I have availability here for all the maps. If I zoom out a little, so you can see the white parts here, they are where the map is not available for download. So you can look at the availability grid, and once you are happy with that and you know that you can ask for download for that area, you click here and you can download by drawing a polygon or a rectangle or a buffer, and you can modify your drawings. You can use coordinates, use tile names, select the visible area, import polygons from another place, and it will work as well. So I will try the rectangle, click, go away, click again, and it all turned red. That means that I'm asked for more than I can download. So I zoomed in a little more, and now let's try a smaller area. If you want a bigger area, you can ask for small areas, little by little, and build your map on a GIS program, for example. So I can download this much. I will just click here, add to basket, and choose a theme, original sheets, national grid tiles. Let's go for original, and then request download, and you'll get your download ready. So that is just a quick overview of Digimap and how you can use historic Digimap for your research. Thank you very much.